A lot has happened since the days of Ali'i and Heiau on the islands of Papahana Mokuākea, but the stewardship of Native Hawaiians endures.
We all know as soon as we set foot on it that there's something really remarkable about the place, and to mālama that is an honor and gives us all as much as we give.
That's the voice of Cynthia Vanderlip, the Curie Field Camp Supervisor at the Department of Land and Natural Resources. Curie Atoll, or Moku Pāpapa, is the furthest and most remote island in Papahana Mokuākea. It's teeming with life filled with coral reefs, dolphins, monk seals, and green sea turtles. The abundance of the atoll also makes it a high and tangled risk zone for marine debris that accumulates in the area. Teams of dedicated stewards regularly make the journey to mālama this space, but in an area so inaccessible from the main Hawaiian Islands, how do we ensure Papahana Mokuākea will be continually cared for? My name is Kaleo Pa'avaris, and this is Hanohano Nā ʻāina Kūpuna, exploring Papahana Mokuākea. In this episode, we look to the future and talk to the next generation of stewards of Papahana Mokuākea.
Papahana Mokuākea, sacred islands way out there. Born of Papa and Wakea, Papahana Mokuākea.
One of the most closely held tenets to the Native Hawaiian belief system is aloha ʻāina, or love for the land. Our culture is inseparable from the land and the people who are born from her. Many Hawaiians understand that care for the land is paramount and must come before any other concerns. Stewardship of a place is a massive responsibility and an honor that should not be taken lightly. Aulani Wilhelm, the former NOAA superintendent for Papahana Mokuākea, tells us how the place is a reminder for what life should be in the documentary Papahana Mokuākea, where nature and culture are one.
I think places on the planet like Papahana Mokuākea give us this sense of wellness before the baseline shifted, to remind us and to give us purpose, to try to make different decisions, to live on this planet in a way. And I'm super proud that one of those places on the planet is Hawaii. And it's one of Hawaii's gift to ourselves, gift to future generations, and I think gift to the world.
Just as we honor the work of the people before us, we must nurture new stewards to continue the work at Papahana Mokuākea. How do we go about creating a new generation of stewards? According to Dr. Kekuava Kikiloi, it's already happening.
But I think on a more tangible level, we need to allow more Native Hawaiians to go up there. You know, one organization that has been really good about this has been Kani Mokuia, the Voyaging Academy. They sort of culminate, I think, some of their programs with a trip up there as sort of a rite of passage, and I think that's absolutely amazing for young Hawaiians to go up there and see those places. Just it's such an epic landscape that that by itself would be like wow, but all of those young students are also like culturally grounded as well, so even more so it impacts them. I'm blown away, to be honest. The younger generation that is coming up, that is now reaching sort of emerging professional sort of stages of their lives, and then even the college students that are coming in, they're some ways like I just wrote a letter of rec for this one young Hawaiian, and I was like reflecting back on where I was at 20 years old, and I was like I had just started Hawaiian language at 20 years old and this kid has like 6 years already, you know what I mean? And I was like, wow, like where are we going to be, in like another 20 years, right? These kids are coming in as the recipients of a lot of the programs that were created by older generations, and we're starting to really see the power behind that.
One of the most impactful projects to inspire the next generation of stewards was the Ku'ula program. Ku'ula was a course at the University of Hawaii at Hilo that was conducted every other year from 2008 until 2016, where cohorts of students traveled to Pehemanu or Midway Atoll and Kauai. Students learned about the resource management, conservation efforts, and stewardship of the place.
Ku'ula was an idea that was actually worked on with, at the time, Eleni Wilhelm was our superintendent. And Mahina Paishan was also a member of our team at that time. And so connections were made at a specific workshop in 2007 with Misaki Takabayashi, who was at that time a professor at the University of Hawaii at Hilo.
That's Moani Pai, the administrative officer for Papahānau Mokuākea Marine Monument.
So in 2008, the first cohort of Ku'ula was created. And the idea of that was to not only bring awareness to these systems and validate that our knowledge systems, that indigenous knowledge systems are equally valid as Western knowledge systems, yeah, and that Western science is not the only way, that Hawaiian science had already been occurring for hundreds of years, you know, so this is just something that need to be put on an equal platform, that these can actually be beneficial to each other, that they can blend together, that we can learn from each other, that one way is not the only way, that there are, you know, so there are different schools of knowledge, right? And so this is something that we had thought, our kids are going into college and they're learning Western science. How do we get them to continue to practice Hawaiian science and make it valid so that it's on a level in which they can both be talked about and both benefit each other? Because at the end of the day, without the people and the connection to people, to those places, it doesn't matter what your science say, because how are they going to use it? They're the ones who live there, right? So this whole community-based, place-based management of areas is very important, because if not, then why are we doing it? If it doesn't benefit the people and the places that we serve, then why are we doing it? This whole notion of integrating Western and Hawaiian science, you know, traditional ecological systems and Western systems together and bridging that was the goal in creating this class.
We spoke to two graduates from the Ku'ula program, Nākoa Goo and Keali Sagum.
Aloha mai kākou. My name is Nākoa Goo. I'm originally from Pohua on the Big Island, but living on Oahu now.
Aloha mai, o wau no o Keali Sagum. I'm currently the Regulatory and Compliance Program Specialist with the State of Hawaii Department of Land and Natural Resources, Division of Aquatic Resources.
Nākoa first visited Pehemanu when he was an undergraduate at UH Hilo, then went on to work for the Papahānau Mokuākea office at the Moku Ka Papa Discovery Center.
My role there was to teach people about the value of Papahānau Mokuākea, go into classrooms, provide marine biology based education, and help to run the museum and with all kinds of other tasks as assigned. That comes with running things like aquariums and exhibits and teaching kids.
Nākoa credits his career, his research philosophy, and his passion for conservation to the Ku'ula program.
The Ku'ula program, where it was offered as a course at UH Hilo in the Marine Science Department by Misaki Takabayashi, she was kind of our leader, you know, going into that class and organizing things and setting it up. And she's currently at Kapiolani Community College. She's the chancellor there. So she just came back to Hawaii. But she kind of had the vision along with other people in Noa, like Moani Pai, Olani Wilhelm, and others who had a vision for, bringing local students up there who are trying to focus in marine science-based careers, and give us the opportunity to visit there. And also the main kind of premise of the course was to demonstrate integrated science, so blending Western and indigenous-based knowledge systems to support or answer some type of research question that maybe had significance for conservation and management of the place. And so I was lucky enough to be in a group. My project during the course was to look at what native mea kanu or plants were found on the island. And surprisingly, there's very few plant species that can tolerate that environment. And so it was just kind of surprising to see it, even though it's very remote, as remote as that place is, it's still very heavily impacted from the World War II era, at least for Midway.
For Keali'i, the Ku'ula program was his opportunity to blend ancestral knowledge and modern scientific techniques.
Back when I was in college, it was kind of difficult to. People were talking about bridging the gap between science and Ike Hawaii, and it was known that there was a disconnect, and so like that's why there was a lot of people double majoring at the time, because we're trying to be that bridge, so that almost like a translator that can translate Ike Hawaii for science people and translate science stuff for Ike Hawaii, and kind of like be that liaison between the two communities, so that we can be all one big community, because it's all Ike, right? And it's all important. My project in Ku'ula, I was very interested in looking at. I had this thing about sharks. And so I was very interested in. We were reading Mo'olelo in my Hawaiian studies courses, reading through Hawaiian language newspapers, and so I was really interested in how sharks behaved, and the interactions that our Kūpuna had with sharks, right? Because you read about in Mo'olelo, like as Omakua, right? You hanai the shark, and they have that familial relationship to the mano. Now, fast forward, the human interactions here with sharks, you see a different pilina with mano, and so part of what our project was to compare how the pilina has changed here, and how that may correlate with like more shark attacks, and then also part of it was going up to Pihemanu, Koehelani, and observing the mano up there, which was basically them if there was no human interaction, right? And so that was like the comparison, and I felt like it was a really cool bridge for me, and it was a way for me to like quantitatively and qualitatively look at like Mo'olelo Hawaii and compare it to data that we have now in a useful way.
In his journey to Papahānau Mokuākea, Nākoa dove headfirst into an environment that few people ever get to experience.
Certain things get revealed that you wouldn't normally see. And it has to do with just, I guess, the elements and the species and the wildlife there kind of have a chance to behave and act how they normally would want to, without being, if they were not disrupted by human activities like they are in the main Hawaiian Islands. So you get to kind of see things that kind of defy what you thought was like the norm, or what is normal is not normal up there. Other species aren't up there that something I noticed, like kole, for example, they're not really as frequently found. The patterns and the types of species you see changes as you go northward because the water gets colder as you get to the higher latitudes. And by the time you get to Kure Atoll at the end, the corals grow very slowly. So that most of the coral growth is all concentrated in shallow waters. And then when you dive under, it's like you start to see that the island is just going to eventually sink and turn into a seamount. So you get to see that kind of life stage of a moku that we don't really grasp over here, I guess. I guess if you think about like the difference between Big Island and Oahu having much larger bays and larger fringing reefs like in Kaneohe, and then Big Island isn't at that stage yet. And then you go up there and you get to see the very last stages of the life of the island.
Just like Nākoa, many graduates from the Ku'ula program are now in resource management, conservation, and ecology positions. The Ku'ula program was instrumental in creating the next generation of stewardship.
Something like as small as the decision like of taking a class has shaped the trajectory of my life is kind of insane. I think my biggest takeaway was that I'm not the only one who's trying to do what we were trying to do, bridging this gap between Western science and Ike Hawaii. And it kind of created this this group of like-minded individuals who were striving for the same thing, and kind of like jump-starting our like passion.
From there, it was a really beneficial experience for us that kind of gave us momentum and things to work on that helped our careers become what they are now.
Kuleana can be interpreted so many different ways and can be expressed in so many different ways. And it's very intangible. Like it's like you're getting nudged in directions by like your Kūpuna, the people that came before you, and yeah, you kind of just have to let go and go with the flow. And even if you don't know what your kuleana is, it'll get shown to you in due time.
It is a very special place, very remote. I feel like anytime I've gone there, I had a function or a purpose. And if I didn't, then it wasn't the right time for me to go. The place called me and is pulling me in till this day from the first time I went there all those years ago. To maintain involvement, and just knowing that it's worthy of protection.
For Auntie Pua Kanakaʻole Kanahele, inspiring the next generation is a natural step in her stewardship.
Passion maintains, it stays with us, and it builds up who we are. And so I think that's what I did. I shared passion. And hopefully and some of people got it, some of the people didn't, and that's all right. Sometimes you're just not ready for it, and you have to get ready for it. But as long as they're exposed to it, exposing is important. And so that's what I did, expose them. And we went through ceremonies and talked about why we do the ceremonies and who we're doing the ceremonies to. Mostly we're doing it to our ancestors. Most of our ceremonies are to our ancestors. To your ancestor, to my ancestor, because we're their kuleana. Okay. And if they're Hawaiian, they're going to mālama you. And so that's what we're going to count on. And then it all goes back to not only our ancestors, but the islands as ancestors. And again, when I talked about the upper islands, like being an older sibling, it's ancestral.
Kevin O'Brien, president and founder of the Papahānaumokuākea Marine Debris Project, felt that call to take care of the islands.
You know, the islands within Papahana Moku Akea are seen as the Kūpuna Islands, you know, where the Hawaiian island chain was born and the Hawaiian people were born, and where things go when they die. And that, you know, like, I'm not Hawaiian, but in almost every culture in the world, it's the younger generation's responsibility to take care of the Kūpuna when they get too old. And I think that the exact same thing applies, that all of us who are young and able, it is our responsibility to take care of the Kūpuna Islands if we're able to do so.
There are plenty of opportunities available for people to learn about stewardship. James Morioka, Executive Director of the Papahana Moku Akea Marine Debris Project, regularly hires staff to help with their mission.
It's our responsibility to protect the wildlife and habitat of Papahana Moku Akea from the threats of marine debris. And so each year, you know, we hire about 16 to 20 seasonal staff, all local people. A large portion come from the Native Hawaiian community. They do not require the same stringent backgrounds or requirements that NOAA Fisheries did. So we're able to take local people that are going to be able to, you know, put their all into Hawaii, and whether they stay with us or continue on, they're able to give back to the Hawaiian community.
For some people, like Hau'oli Lorenzo Ilarco, that connection and responsibility to steward can begin without needing to make the voyage.
And I think about things like the Mauna Kea movement. People who have never been up to the Mauna before was so moved to go there, right? Or so moved to Kia'i, that place, right? And so that tells us that you don't necessarily need to, if you don't have kuleana there, right? You don't need to go. And you don't need to go in order to love that space, in order to protect that space. And we know that. We know these things because of our language, because of our perspectives, because of our history, right? We know, again, we know that Papahana Moku Akea is a part of our genealogy, and so that's why we protect it, right? We know what it looks like because of the different names that we have for the islands. We know what the environment might also look like because of the names of the limu, of the fish that are in that area. So again, for me, you don't need to go there in order to build a relationship with that place.
In a video about Curie Atoll, William Ila, former chairperson of the Department of Land and Natural Resources, said this.
What we need to do is think less about our needs today and think more about the needs of our children tomorrow, which will result in better land development, better allocation of funding, better prioritization of work products that will lead to the improvement of natural resources, so that our children and grandchildren then have a challenge. Because if we leave it better for them and challenge them to leave it better for the next generation, by the time we get about 10 generations down the road, it should be in pretty good shape.
Our relationship to Papahana Moku Akea is reciprocal. It's our kuleana to care for the space, but what can we learn from the space in turn?
It was a place that we were, and I think that's a big part about it, is for us to be there again as Kanaka, right? So I think those are important things to show that this is our space.
Next episode, we talk about the scientific endeavors of Papahana Moku Akea and how current research blends modern methodologies with more traditional ways, more knowing.